Hello, everybody, and welcome to WTS 250.
250, love it.
My word. My name is Danny Murray.
I'm Graham Harrigan.
How are you doing, Graham? Are you well, my friend?
Yeah, no, I feel good. 250, that's mad, isn't it?
I know, yeah. And when you factor in when we used to do the 600 and all that kind of stuff, I'd say we've put out almost 300 at this point, episodes.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
And when you factor our little breaks and our hiatuses, could be 350.
That's it, yeah. Look, 6 years we're at this.
Unreal.
Mad.
Roll on the next 6 years.
But yeah, anyway, how's tricks for you? All good?
Yeah, no worries. Can't complain. I turned 37 at the weekend. Rock and roll.
Indeed, yeah. You did indeed. Happy birthday to you.
I stopped celebrating my birthday after I hit 30.
Did you?
No point. Yeah, no point.
Will you mark the big, like the roundy birthdays as they say, that the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and so forth?
I suppose so. Everyone does, don't they?
That's it. I officially beat Jesus at the end of the month. I turned 34.
Go on. Was Jesus not 32?
He was 33. So
when are you 34?
The end of the month.
And friend of the show, Mark Brock's birthday was yesterday. How old is he? 34 yesterday?
34, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So that's it. So Brock is beating Jesus. I'm on the brink of beating him. And as soon as I do, that'll be me. I'll be happy with that. I'll have beaten him.
Go around the gap from the nip.
I mean, I do that most of the time anyway.
To celebrate.
This is it, man.
Jeez, yeah, can't believe you're 34, Dan. Can't believe I'm 37.
Yeah.
Jono's birthday soon as well.
End of November, yeah. Yeah. It's gas because he's the 28th of the month, I'm the 29th of the month. And my dad always gets them mixed up. And,
does he? Still?
But what? Wait till you hear this. So one year he got it so fucking wrong. The end of November, like the 28th of November, thereabouts, he turns around and he's like, "Happy birthday, son." I was like, "That was a month ago, Dad." And he was like, "I mean, it's the other lad's birthday." He said, "Yeah," and he goes, "I better go tell him so."
I can imagine your dad saying that as well.
Yeah, just a real typical Irish dad kind of situation.
Yeah.
Always makes me laugh.
Forgetting the birthdays. Class.
That's it, man. That's it.
All right, will we go straight into the interview?
Straight in, no kissing. That's what I say.
Okay, joining us now is Jack of all trades, but currently special advisor to the government, the wonderful Anne Marie McNally. How are you, Amo? Affectionately known as Amo. Some people, like, I've always been Amo, and then some people, when they meet me, call me Amo because of the spelling. I'm like, no, Amo. Look. No, not Eamon Dunphy, like, do you know?
Yeah, Amo has to have an E in it. That's what I always say, yeah.
Yeah. I say Jack of all trades there because you've done so much in your life, haven't you, Amo? Like, did you start out in physio with Leinster Senior League or St. James Gate or something?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if starting out was the right way, but like I studied accountancy, believe it or not, in college. I know, and I bleeding hated it. And let me tell you, I'm shit at maths as well, so it wasn't a great fit from the outset. So while I was doing that, then I was kind of volunteering at the time with Usher Celtic FC down in Island Bridge there, based out of Oliver Bond. And an opportunity came up. They'd been given funding, and in fairness, the club secretary was always like super helpful to me. So he asked me, did I want, because I was giving them a dig out on a Sunday, just kind of doing water person on the pitch and that, and the magic eye spray. So he asked me then, did I want to go and do formal training, and went out to UCD, done a year's intro course, just in kind of sports med and stuff, and then went on into the physio from there. Yeah, so I stayed with Usher for years, but then at the time it was a lot unusual to have a woman doing the role. So it kind of came to the attention of like a lot of the representative teams from the leagues, etc. So I ended up then getting like a fair amount of gigs with like the Leinster squad, the AUL representative panel, etc. So done a fair bit of travelling with decent teams, and then spent a bit of time over at Tranmere as well as part of me training on the course.
No way.
So it suited me because love football, love sports. I think I tweeted there recently, as a 16-year-old, I was going out with a lad at the time who was playing for James's Gate.
That's where I got the James's Gate from, sorry.
Yeah. And I marched up to James's Gate one Friday night and I was like, here, let's write the match reports for your programme. They were like, yeah, work. Because they used to do it was like, €1 for the programme every week. They were like, yeah, work away, stick it in. So from there, then I went into the local newspaper, the local news, kind of doing sports report, and then that branched out, as it does in local media, to just covering everything that was going on in the local community as such. So I was kind of balancing the two at the time, but I always considered the physio and the sports stuff like a hobby because it was just something I loved doing, whereas the newspaper was my full-time job. But because I'd gotten so involved in community affairs, I ended up working then in Dolphin House. I was living in Dolphin House at the time, the flats complex on the barn there. So I ended up working in there then as a community worker.
So is that where the activism came into it then?
Yeah, well, you see, because of the local newspaper and that, and I mean, I had a joke about this, but I wrote my first letter to the Herald at the time when I was 10 years of age, because I was up in arms. A load of young people were after vandalising St. Michan's Church, just there across the Des-Kelly Bridge. And at the time, I remember the Herald had ran a piece and it was all like, young people in the inner city, blah, blah, blah. And I was fuming over it, so I wrote a letter to the Herald going, you know, don't tar everybody with the same brush, and maybe if there were services for kids like us, whatever. So I think that was actually my first bit of activism. I remember my dad had it cut out and in a little frame on the windowsill. Like,
at 10 years of age, my God.
I always say, I think I had a chip on my shoulder without realising it growing up. I grew up in Rialto. And it was like massively, massively disadvantaged at the time. I mean, it was the epicenter of the heroin epidemic.
Yeah.
Crack Alley, Fatima was known as. I used to have to walk through Crack Alley twice a day to get to and from school. Like, so it was always somewhere in the back of my mind going, something about this isn't fair. Like, I don't think other people are living like this. So that's kind of, it was ingrained in me from there. I mean, we never seen a politician. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody ever knocked around their doors canvassing or anything.
That's mad, isn't it?
How does that translate then into your current role and duties?
I mean, it's always that kind of underdog mentality and fighting for those. And I always used to say when I was in community work, there's a huge amount of stuff that happens about people. So there's loads of meetings and representative bodies and officials constantly meeting about people. It's better now, but at the time, there's very little including the people. So, like, I'd hear lots of people talking about the heroin epidemic and lots of people talking about the issues in the inner city. But what I wasn't hearing was voices from people who were living there. Or, you know, you weren't seeing yourself or your family or your neighbours or friends reflected in the political system. So it just always felt like people were talking about us and not to us. So when I joined the Community Development Project, at that stage, the residents in Dolphin had been through 3 failed regeneration attempts. So there'd been 3 PPNs that had failed. So they were completely disillusioned. They were sick to the back teeth of Dublin City Council officials telling them this, that and the other, you know. So from the outset, we made a very strong point of making sure that the residents led the project that we were embarking on. And we had them at the table. I mean, it was leaking gas at times. Like, you'd have, you know, really bolshy, and it was mostly women, to be honest, that got involved early on from the flats, sitting at the table with these officials going, here are you, and just, I'm not taking it, like, and the officials just weren't used to it, you know. So it took the guts of a year or two of me being there and the new regeneration project to kind of make them go, actually, yeah, we kind of have to listen to the residents in this. And it was a sea change, really, and it was actually a good kind of good blueprint, because I suppose they were lucky enough in Dolphin in that Fatima had happened. The regeneration of Fatima had happened. And it wasn't a massive success. It was a physical regeneration, but there hadn't been a real social regeneration. So we kind of been able to look across and go, look, it's no point in giving us new gaffs if the shit is still the same, you know. And like, I went out, we secured funding, and we went out to the Terry Prone Communications Clinic with a couple of the women to do a full day's training course to get them ready for media, so that we could put the residents front and foremost when all the RTE cameras, etc., descended down. So it wasn't some talking head in a suit going, here's what the people in Dolphin need. It was somebody in Dolphin themselves going, here's the crap with sewage coming up my bath, here's the crap with damp on my walls, you know, and just kind of have that. So that's kind of I've always been like, let's get our voices out there instead of people talking about us, and I try and bring that still into everything I do.
It's gas, because when you said there about it was mostly women that were involved in it, I think to where me and Mero are from, Ballybrack, Loughlinstown, and I can remember for years when we were growing up, that kind of community activism, that kind of stuff that happens at a grassroots level, it often is women that lead that. And then there's a couple of blokes who tag on at the end and get into the photos and whatever when they come around. But like more often than not, it's driven by women in the area who are seeing it every day.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually...
That's why the councillors listen to you as well.
Well, you know, like you might have seen him, I done what you call that, International Women's Day post on Insta last year, because that tends to piss me off every year, because it's all these like little cliques of, you know, women that go for lunch and celebrate International Women's Day. But like, I grew up around some of the strongest women who were out there, I just say, like every day fighting, and didn't realize they were fighting, but for basic rights, for basic services, for their kids, for themselves, for their community. But if you turned around and said to any of them, "Here, do you know what? You'd make a great politician," the reaction is like, "Not a bleed, not me. No, I wouldn't be able." It's very hard to get people to say, "This is activism. This is what it is. This is what we need." And it's just that bit of extra confidence that people need. And I always say, I know myself when I was growing up, certainly my mum and the women I grew up around, they're never going to take themselves off into Dublin Castle for a fancy lunch, for women for election, or they're just not prepared to do that. It's completely out of their comfort zone. So
it's wasting time for them. They probably think it's wasting time to do.
Yeah, and it's like that's for others, like in different circles. You need to bring this stuff to where the women are at and say, "Do you know what? You're bleeding great. Get out there. What you're doing here in the flats is equally important in Drimnagh and Crumlin in your local area all around. Get out and have your voice heard."
Do you think there's enough of that? Do you think there's enough people out there who are willing to meet people where they are, as opposed to expecting them to come to them?
I mean, it's better now, obviously, than it was. And to be fair, I've been out of the frontline community sector for a while, so I'm not 100% certain what it's like on the ground. But I still think if it comes down to it, no, I don't think enough is being done to mobilise people locally. And, you know, like non-partisan completely, but where it does happen, it does tend to be political parties specifically recruiting, and that's grand, like great, get people involved in it, but there should be a space where people can become politically active and not feel tied to a particular party. You know, they're not just joining for a party because a party has approached them.
Yeah.
That people should feel confident saying, well, actually, I'm an activist and I've had a read of your manifesto, whatever it is, and yeah, I'm standing for you because but not just because you've been asked.
Do you think, and I'm going a kind of different direction here, and Mero, sorry if I'm hogging this now, but just the questions are...
And I'm a waffler, so you're going to have to cut me off.
So, but you mentioned there about how it can be difficult to get women into politics. They're great at getting into the kind of the community activism and whatever, but then when it comes to stepping up beyond that, you're quite active on social media, but obviously there's a bad side to that as well. Do you think that bad side of social media is also like there's women who are kind of, you know, even though they're not heavily involved, they probably still have a negative experience with lads sliding into their DMs and all sorts, or the abuse that they get. How big a role does that play, do you reckon, in putting people off?
Yeah, look, it can absolutely put you off, and like I've talked about this in interviews before. I'm somebody who's fairly immune to that kind of stuff to a certain extent, and I recognise that that's me, and I hate using the word privilege, you know, but because I can do that. But if I was somebody who could do that, would it bother me? Yeah, absolutely it would. And like, particularly when I was running for election, I've had some horrendous stuff said to me, everything from rape threats to like, and at the time in 2016 when I ran first, I was like heavily overweight. Some of the stuff that was directed at me was horrendous if you were in any way soft, and I am a little bit, to be honest, right, when it comes down to stuff. But like, my campaign manager afterwards told me some of the stuff that, you know, they kept off my radar as well. But I mean, some of that really personal, vindictive stuff, there's no doubt about it, does get to you. And if you're somebody who's going into it afraid of that kind of stuff, or, you know, sensitive to it, yeah, I can see how you'd absolutely say, no, I'm not opening myself up to that at all. And I mean, even I've gotten a little bit more, Buzz, you've probably seen on my Insta stories, about calling that shit out, like, because like for years was getting that kind of stuff and blocking out the names and all. Then you're going, why am I doing this? Like, I don't know this fella. And the neck of them, like, it's different if somebody's, you know, chancing their arm, or you know, maybe wanting to have a chat or whatever. But like, some of the dopes are just like straight up in your face. You're like, what are you thinking? And do you know what's mad? And I was chatting about this because sometimes when I post that, like some of my lad friends will get in touch and be like, "Here, I've had a look at his profile." They're nearly always like blokes with their kids or whatever it is on their profile, you know. And you're like, you're doing this publicly, essentially publicly. Like, do you think, or you're so safe in the knowledge that I'm not going to call it out, that you're comfortable to do it? How many other women have you done it to? You know?
Yeah, there's a weird arrogance in some blokes that I think they think they're not going to get called out as well. But then, just in general, and I'm conscious here, it's a terrible pun, but like the balls to send a dick pic unsolicited to somebody and expect to get a favourable response. I'm not sure.
I don't know what I'm saying it.
It's a.
I wonder, has anybody in the history of the universe ever wrote back and went, "Oh yeah, let's chat."
You've convinced me. You've convinced me.
You've kids busy, yeah. Are you up? Come on, I stall it around. Like, it's just beggars belief. You know, you were saying there, Amo, about the activists that you were around during that time, and you know, trying to get them to the next level. Say, oh, you'd make a good politician, or you'd make a good councillor, whatever. Is that how you got involved in? Because you ran as a candidate for the Social Democrats. Is that how you got involved in that? In a conversation
No.
like that?
And again, it's the whole jack of all trades thing. So it kind of was like a convergence of everything that I was doing. So the sports stuff in and of itself kind of inadvertently, and particularly when you're with a club like, you know, Usher or any club, you're constantly advocating. And then I was elected chairperson of the club. So for 2 years, I was chairperson of Usher Celtic. And that meant like being out at the AUL, representing the club, constantly fighting for funding, constantly on to the local politicians, looking for, you know, facilities, whatever it was. So you're kind of on that side. There's an element of activism being involved in the admin of a sports club. And then in my day job at the time, then I was working in either the local newspaper or the community project. So that was all happening for me. But then 2008 hit, and obviously the arse started to fall out of the community sector. Board sniff knew it. I could see the writing on the wall, and I was thinking to myself, how am I going to be able to be active, try and implement some of the change that I want to see in society? So literally, it was just a spur of the moment decision one day in the office in Dolphin. I was Googling around, and the DCU master's course in political comms. So I applied. I was very lucky. It was the last year that the grant was available for postgrad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford to do it. So got the grant, got the place, and I'd initially applied to do it part-time because I was working at the time. And then when the timetable came out, I was looking at it going, full-time timetable looks the exact same, more or less, as the part-time. I could get this done over the course of a year if I really put me back into it. So I did. I applied to change to the full-time. So I used to finish in Dolphin at about 4, go straight out to DCU, do my classes. And I just loved it so much that I just threw myself into a full-on, like, I really, really loved it, and I got a first out of it, and I'm still super proud of that because I was juggling so many balls at the time, like, but it was just purely because I was like, this stuff is going to help me be the change that I'm looking for, like. And again, just the stars kind of aligned for me. Just as I was graduating on ActiveLink, there was a job ad. It just said independent left-leaning TD, didn't name the TD. I applied and went in. It was Catherine Murphy, as it happens. Done the interview, got it. Now I started off on 2 days a week, and I'd taken my redundancy out of Dolphin because like there was 6 months left before none of us had jobs, so I took the redundancy while I was there. So that allowed me to cover it for the first 2 or 3 months. But Jesus, it was a struggle, like going from full-time gig to 2 days. But I knew I was in, and I was getting my foot where I needed to be, kind of thing. So I persevered and struggled. Like, look, it was a struggle. I remember being out in Dundrum one night with my mum, and we were getting, you know, food in the food court, and I was like, Jesus, I forgot it was such a luxury to actually get food out and sit and eat, like, because I was so broke at the time. I literally hadn't had a takeaway for months. So, but I was like, this is where I need to be, and if I just persevere, it'll work. And in fairness, I threw myself into it big time. So by the stage of my 6-month probation, myself and Catherine had formed such a good working bond. She didn't want to be without me. I was where I wanted to be, and it just kind of took off from there, really, for me.
And at that stage, was the Social Democrats formed at that stage?
No, Catherine was an independent TD, and so like our big piece of work that we started working on straight away was the whole site serve stuff. I think so that really kind of took over fairly early on when I was working with Catherine. So in the 24, I started working with Catherine in April 2012. And then when the 2014 local elections were rolling around, we were kind of looking around saying, how can we help more people like us come into this system? So we set up a thing at the time called the Independence Alliance. And it was basically just to try and give support to a couple of like solid independents that were standing around the country. And I mean, Gary Gannon was a member at the time. Well, not a member because it wasn't a membership thing, but at the time, a few decent people like that. And it was really just to kind of say, look, you know, if you're stuck for any advice on how certain things work, if you need any help with assembling your piece for the election officers, etc., just that kind of admin stuff, just to make the process easier, to try and convince somebody who might have been on the fence going, oh, no, I don't even know where to start. Say, well, look, we can start it for you. It was relatively successful, and we met some really good people through it who are still involved in politics, thankfully. But after the 2014 locals, to be honest, the way the political system is set up in Ireland, the funding system is a disaster zone, right? And unless you're a party, you're at such a disadvantage. You really are, because the entire political funding structure is weighted towards parties. So as much as we kind of wanted initially to keep it as a kind of movement type thing, and at the time we were looking at things like Podemos and how they had done it, but the funding structure here just would have put us on the back foot from the outset. So in the course of, over the course of 2015, meetings were happening between Catherine, Roisin and Stephen. Then each of them brought their person into the room. I was Catherine's person. And over the course of a year, we just trashed out what kind of we believed in, what we shared, what could work. And 2016, the Social Democrats were launched. And there they are.
So you're a founding member of the Social Democrats?
I am indeed, yeah.
Six of you, is it?
So it was Catherine, Roisin and Stephen as the elected representatives, and then each of the TDs brought their person into the room then. Yeah. So it was kind of again, I mean, we've talked about it a fair amount in the media. It was around Roisin's kitchen table primarily for a year, just trashing out policy ideas, structural ideas around the whole formation of the party, etc. And just going with it, yeah.
And just to be clear to listeners, Stephen is current Minister for Health and Fianna Fáil members Donnelly. Stephen Donnelly.
He is indeed Stephen Donnelly. Yeah, I'm sorry, it was actually 2015 because the election was 2016. So it was July 2015 that the party launched, and we contested the election in February 2016. And I stood as a candidate primarily because it was such a new party, really didn't have candidates. And look, I'd always had, if not electoral ambitions, political ambitions. So it just seemed like a kind of natural thing to do. Wasn't fully prepared for it, particularly that, as you spoke about earlier, that public face and piece, etc. And nothing can prepare you, and I say this all the time, nothing can prepare you for your face hanging out of a lamppost when you drive out your estate in the morning.
And what about,
that shit's scary.
What about Vincent Browne? Can that prepare you for Vincent Browne?
Well, you know, I'd been doing Vincent Browne for a couple of years before standing, because so he used to have this thing where he'd pick somebody who was left-leaning and who didn't necessarily have a voice in the community. I'd met him through a couple of things with Catherine or whatever, and he liked me. We kind of hit it off. So he invited me onto the show one night as like a left voice, and I went on, not knowing anything about the setup, and I was put in the seat right beside him, right? Grand, now whether I sat down, somebody else on the panel goes to me, "Oh my God, you're in the hot seat." It's like, what? It's like, yeah, no, that's where he puts people he's going to go after. I was like, I was shitting it from the outset, and go after me he did, right? And it was something, he was taking a mad right-wing position with me. It was about youth unemployment and mental health stuff, right? And he was basically going like, but aren't they all lazy bastards that won't work, whatever? And I was like, what? And I ended up having a real Barney with him. And when we went to the break, he goes to me, "Fair play, you held your own, you're off the hook." It was literally a challenge, like.
No way.
Yeah.
He actually said that on the break, did he?
Yeah. So after that, then we got on great, and I was on, in fairness, I was on nearly once a month, and like I always say, the loss of Vincent Browne was a big loss for people like me and voices like me who wouldn't have got the opportunity otherwise, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still feeling his loss. But I think at the moment, I think Claire Brock's doing a good job in the last couple of months.
She is, absolutely, yeah.
But I don't think, is there anyone like Vincent? And will there be anyone like Vincent? I think maybe Sarah McNerney is close.
Yeah, no, and in terms of interviews, she's great. But the one thing about Vincent was he took a very, in that case, personal interest in his panel and who he was having on. It wasn't just left to the producers. He wanted who he wanted on. And like I say, that bit about having like the kind of unknown lefty voice was something that gave me an opportunity. And from like once you do a bit of media and you don't make a tit yourself, you tend to get other requests then for stuff. So a lot flowed from Vincent giving me that start. Now back in the day when I worked in the community, I used to have a half-hour program every Friday on News Talk, just community matters kind of stuff. So I was, as you can tell, fairly confident in front of a mic and hard to shut up.
No harm in that. No harm in that.
Absolutely, that's what you need, isn't it? So with the when you ran for Social Democrats, was that a good or bad experience? Now, obviously, you weren't elected, but like you did.
Thanks,
then. I didn't mean it like that, but you became the comms director for Social Democrats.
Yeah, so when I was running, I was the comms director for the Social Democrats because, again, just to say, we were like,
Jesus.
Yeah, so we were like 6-7 months in existence. We didn't have funding at that stage because we hadn't contested an election, so we didn't have funding for staff. So I was working full time for Catherine. Legally, the Soc Dems didn't exist until they contested an election. You're not entitled to political funding. So I was still being paid as per my role with Catherine. I was doing Catherine's job, doing the Soc Dems job, and running for election. It wasn't ideal, obviously, and I'd be working, and I mean, there's no such thing as a 9 to 5 in the Dáil, so you'd be working all day till God knows what hour, and oftentimes the team would be out without me because that was just the reality of it. I always felt really shit about lads coming out from work and I mean, that was February election, if you remember. It was freezing. One of my lads actually got stuck to a pole hanging posters. It was so cold. And I'd always have this awful guilt, like, oh my God, they're out there and I'm in work. But I ended up doing like so much better than any of us anticipated. I only missed out on the seat by 500 votes in the end, which was a massive surprise to me. And had that not been the case, I probably wouldn't have contested another election again. But then it was that thing of going, well, you were so close. You kind of have to contest the next one. But I mean, to be honest, my heart wasn't really in it, if I'm 100% honest. And I've thought about this a lot, obviously, because when you run for election and you're kind of dissecting it all afterwards, what went wrong as such, because the next result was far off what the initial result was. I have much more of an affinity with the inner city and where I'm from, Alto, etc. I live in Lucan. I ran in Dublin Midwest, but it's not my natural home turf. There's a huge amount of it that I didn't necessarily identify with, and I think in fairness to the electorate, they probably picked up on that a little bit. In hindsight, if I was doing things over, I'd probably have sought to contest Dublin South Central.
Wow. That's mad because Owen O'Brien ran in Ballybrack a couple of years ago, but he wasn't from Ballybrack. And I did often think, now it's very hard for a Sinn Féin candidate to get anywhere in Dunleary-Rathdown because of the affluent area and whatever. But I did often think, did he not do as well as possibly he should have because he wasn't from the area? Did the electorate want somebody from that area? Do you know that way? So it was, and to only not get in by 500 votes is pretty impressive, though.
It was an amazing run the first time. It really was. And I mean, for a while during County, it looked like I was going to get it. And like nobody was more shocked than me and my team, So it led on to you have to contest. And in the meantime, we were still trying to build a party, and somebody at the time described it, and it was the most accurate thing ever. It was like you were trying to build the aircraft while you were in flight. That's the only way you can describe it, because you're literally trying to build a party from the ground up in full membership organ. Where's my pen? a full membership organisation, like nationally, creating branches in as many constituencies as you can, etc., while still working the full-time day job in the Dáil that doesn't stop, and still trying to prepare for electoral contests, etc. I mean, it was absolutely full on.
I reckon that's why people don't get into politics.
Oh, there's a huge element of that. There's no doubt about it. A huge element of that. And I mean, even there, I walked out with a senior female deputy. Just before coming on here, I ran over to get a bit of salad, which I haven't gotten to eat, by the way. And she says to me, "I'm going home to see my kids. I haven't seen them since Sunday." Like that's the reality of this a lot of the time.
Jesus, it's
mad, isn't it?
It's probably worse on weeks like this with the budget and everything else. But it's certainly, well, it's more than just a full-time gig, isn't it? Like it's an always-on kind of gig.
It is, absolutely. It's vocational because. So last year I left politics. I'd been headhunted for a job. It turned me head. It did. And at that stage, I'd served 8 years in frontline politics. I was absolutely exhausted, and I hadn't contested a 2020 election. I'd worked in HQ for the Soc Dems as communications director for the campaign, and had absolutely loved it, and had a very successful campaign, 6 TDs elected. But when it was done, there was like this massive kind of, whew, I'm kind of done at the moment, really felt wiped out. So it was just the time, and when the job offer came in, I was like, actually, 9 to 5, it's just seemed like everything I was looking for. So I took it, and first month it was like such a novelty. Oh my God, look at me going for a walk in the evening. Whoa, this is great. After a month, I had such bad FOMO.
Really?
Everything is happening over there. I'm not in the thick of it. Like, I'd be glued to all the current affairs programs and like texting Catherine about things and stuff. So I was like, oh, I had to admit, and plus as well, I wasn't happy in the job for other reasons. But I met a mate of mine who had also left politics. I used to work with him. And he had the exact same thing, and he'd gone back into politics. And I just happened to say to him, look, do you know what, I'm feeling it. And he says to me, well, as it happens, Joe O'Brien is looking for an advisor. And immediately once I heard it, I was like, oh. So kind of started doing a bit of research into Joe, and look, it was a fit. His politics fit. So it's like, right, this is my opportunity. And my dad, who's sick now, but at the time was like, why wouldn't you want to be in the heart of politics? Get back. So he was in my ear as well.
When you left? He was in your ear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to get back.
He was always super. I mean, like, growing up, I was my dad wasn't around a lot growing up because the 80s, he was working in England for economic reasons. But my dad was, like, he'd been lucky enough to have, at the time, what would have been considered a fairly comfortable family. He was from Portobello. So he'd had a decent secondary school education. So he always kind of felt that, education was hugely important and stuff. Whereas, like, my mom didn't have any formal education or anything. So it was always kind of like, oh, just, once you're happy chicken kind of thing. But my dad would have always been like, get the bleeding education into you. So I'd always kind of had that growing up. My dad would have always had the Irish Times knocking around the house and that Morning Ireland on the radio. So I always kind of had those little influences going on,
Yeah. Now, Amo, right, you are a founding member of the Social Democrats. You ran for Social Democrats. You're Catherine Murphy's advisor in the Social Democrats, and you left for a year or so. And now you're Green Party, Joe O'Brien's special advisor. So is there a conflict of interest there, or are you still a member of the Social Democrats, or how does it work like that?
No, so I had to resign membership of the party when I left to take the job in the NGO sector. So I wasn't a member anyways. And I'm not a member of the Greens. I made it very clear to Joe and Shine that I wouldn't be a member of the Greens. He was 100% comfortable with that because my job doesn't involve anything party political at all. I'm an advisor to him in his ministerial capacity. So it's non-party political. I'm not involved in any of the Green Party politics at all. It's purely departmental stuff. So it works out great from that regard. It suits Joe, it suits myself, it suits the party.
Are you still inclined to text Catherine and say, what are you doing?
Well, I don't about political issues, but I'm still like I will always be like best friends with Catherine. In fairness, had a cup of coffee with her there recently. I mean, Catherine gave me start in politics, was an unbelievable mentor. Is like somebody who is the epitome of a woman in politics who has like grafted all the way through. I mean, we're talking about that social media stuff and the crap you have to put up with, but like before there was social media, there was conservative Ireland who didn't think that women should be out without their husbands. Like she's hilarious when she tells a story about being in the Salmon Lee pub one night having a meeting about some local development that was happening. She was on the town council at the time, and it was 4 and 5 men. And somebody rang her husband at home and was like, "Do you know your wife's in the pub with 5 men?"
Jesus
joking me.
Christ.
Yeah. So I mean that kind of shit to be able to come up through that. And Roisin Shortall always used to say to me as well that she learned early on to sharpen her elbows to make sure she could get into the pictures and stuff, because it wasn't social media, but it was a different form of abuse and probably tougher to actually break through and deal with, you know?
Yeah,
That's it.
that's mad, isn't it?
What is the life of an advisor to a government minister like? Besides always being on and, you know, not getting to eat your salad now for the last hour or whatever.
Well, that's not Joe's fault. That's your fault.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Well, look, I'm relatively new to it. I only started in February, and I think exceptionally lucky in that Joe, my minister, is super to work for. He makes a priority as well for himself to have a bit of work-life balance. I think that does make a difference. I mean, I can't speak for others, but it depends who your minister is, I guess. But I'm really lucky with Joe, and because it's such a passion for me and a vocation. You wouldn't do this if you were only doing it to get paid. Put it that way. There's much easier ways to make a living, particularly like my expertise in inverted commas is comms. You know, so I could be in an agency earning what I'm earning, if not more, and clocking off at 5, but it just wouldn't do it for me.
You get FOMO.
Yeah, and there's that little bit as well about feeling that you're helping make a bit of a difference, right? You know, not every day is a good day, and there's some times that you have to suck shit, you know, but at the end of the day, if you can tell yourself that a bit of what you're doing is making a difference for good in people's lives, and like that sounds a bit bleak and corny, but actually it is true. Getting out of bed to do something that matters is important to me, not just clocking in and taking a few bob.
Yeah. That's mad, because you would talk to people on the lead up to a general election, and you know, whether it be in the pub or a social gathering or whatever, and you'd be trying to gauge, you know, who they're voting for or whatever. And a lot of the time in our area, you might get a conversation where the person's like, "Oh, I'm not voting for them. Sure, what do? They never do anything." But you, in your role, you do try and influence change, and you can see the change. Would you be like, when you came up from the Dolphins Barn and those kind of neglected areas, are you happy with the change that you see now in your role?
I mean, do I think a lot more could be done? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But at the same time, if you're not incrementally chipping away at trying to improve things, then what are you doing? So some of it might be small, some of it might seem fairly minor or inconsequential at the time, but once it's part of progress towards something bigger, I can deal with that. Like I'm not expecting the world to change overnight. But I like it to, absolutely. And is there always that part of me that's revolutionary and wants to like kick the shit out of the establishment as such? Yeah, and that will always be there. But at the same time, I have gotten to the point in life where I can marry that with a bit of pragmatism and go, all right, well, if incremental change is the only change I can make, it's better than no change at all.
Yeah, and is there a difference between being an advisor to a member of the opposition to now being an advisor of somebody who's actually in government?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is a little bit in that, you know, you have to make sure that, particularly in a coalition government, so it's not just a case of, I mean, when I was with Catherine, you just write a speech and go with it, but you need to make sure now on this side that kind of everything marries up, that you're not overstepping on somebody else, that, you know, there's balances to be had all around. But by and large, the crux of the role is the same. Like, for me, I always say that's my person. I'm there for them now. So you do everything in your power to make sure that they're as well equipped, well prepared, and protected as possible, basically. And I think if you haven't got that sense of loyalty to the person you're with, you're probably in the wrong job, to be honest. Like, you have to be all in for that person.
Yeah,
It's mad, isn't it?
it's a great point. I'm conscious that you have a salad to eat and training to get to.
I'm all right till a quarter past. I'm getting picked up at a quarter past.
A quarter past is all right, Graham. Mero was rushing me, but I was going to say, how are you finding? Because you've only recently started getting back into sport in terms of playing it. How have you been finding it? Your social media is great crack in terms of getting updates from it and seeing what you're up to.
I absolutely love it. I mean, obviously, as I said, I've always been around sport all my life. And you know, it's mad because I'm the youngest by 13 years. But neither of my brothers are interested in sport, so I didn't grow up with like sports mad brothers, or whatever. It was always just me. But I never ever played sport. I was hugely overweight. It was just never an option, you know. So I was sitting here in this office one day. I was flicking through Insta, and one of the girls that I know, ironically through politics, had an Insta story up about this club. I'd never even heard of it. Jer's out beside you, well, near enough to you guys. Geraldine P. Moran's out in Cabinteely there, Cornell's Court. And she was like, "Everybody welcome, come along." And at the time, it was, you know, it was kind of billed as a fitness thing as opposed to a team thing. And I just messaged her going, "Jesus, I'd always love to get involved." And she's like, "Come along." And it was like the politics thing. I was like, "Me? No, surely not." Like, she's like, "Why not?" Yeah, actually, why not? Like, so feck it, I'll go. So I went out that night, absolutely shitting it. Knew nobody except for Trina, who I only really barely knew, mostly knew online. And not a clue. I've never been around GA. It was always football for me, like soccer. And I went out and
football on this podcast as well. Don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
But just really enjoyed it. And the manager came over to me at the end of the first session, and he was like, "You've done this before." I was like, "I haven't, no." Jesus, I hadn't a bleeding clue, you know. And he's like, "Oh, you're very comfortable with the ball." So I was like, "I'm just a kind of, you know, you're standing on the sideline, so like volleying or whatever, you know, or keep you uppies." I was like, "Oh, I've kind of always just been around the ball. It's not that I know what I'm doing or whatever." So that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence then that I wasn't a complete, "What do I do with this?" So I went back the second week and I just took off from there. So at the end of the third week, then he says to me, "Look, we're putting a seniors team forward. Are you up for it?" And I was like, "You don't want me? Sure, I'm shit." And he's like, No, I do." It's like, "Look, I'll give it a go if you're willing to give it a go." That was pretty much it. Like, and now I just, like, it's the highlight of my week. Like, it would have been easy for me to say I can't make training tonight. But I really want to go. And in fairness, the club, I can't recommend it enough for anybody out there thinking about it. They have a dads and lads thing on a Friday night as well, and it's the same thing for people who haven't been in sport or have fallen out of it, or for whatever reason, you know. And it's just that kind of ease back into it and give it a go. They're hugely welcoming and supportive. Like,
that's mad, Amo, because as well, like, it's like, I've been following you for years on social media, but now talking to you, you know, you put your mind to something, you kind of do it. And as well as that, you know, you did lose a really substantial amount of weight in such a short space of time. Was it 10 stone you lost?
I lost 10 stone, yeah.
Jesus.
I put about a stone back on over lockdown, say nothing.
But was that a case of kind of just like your career changes, you know, like your jack of all trades stuff? Was that just a case of waking up one morning and saying, right, I need to get rid of this weight? Or
yeah, I'd gotten sick. I was fairly sick for a while, and a big part of how I was treated medically came down to me weight as well. You know, there was a lot of conversations among medics going, "Well, you know, if you were a bit lighter, this things would be easier, etc." Rightly or wrongly, I would suggest. Like, but anyways, it did play on my mind, and then when I came through the illness, I just felt so lucky that I'd gotten a second chance. I really did. And I was like, right, I have to get my shit together here. Yeah, I mean, I was sick in kind of April of that year, and started really making an effort. Now, I'd had a bit of a head start when I was sick. I'd lost amount of weight, like a couple of stone, about 2.5 stone. So I was like well into it. I was like, right, I'm just going to keep this going, you know. So I did really put the effort in, and to be fair, and I've said this before, it was a mindset shift because I'd spent my entire life on diets. There's always some bleeding fat or another, you know. But this time around, it was like, I'm doing this because I want to be well, as opposed to I want to wear X, or I want to be able to go into such and such a shop and buy something, which you can't. Like, I was 20 stone. You can't just randomly walk into a shop, like. But that was always the reason behind it. Whereas this time it was like, I'm lucky to be alive here. I actually need to look after myself. So that kind of spurred me on. And then, as it happens, that December I ended up collapsing in work. It was a funny story around that, but I didn't know I was pregnant, and I had an ectopic pregnancy that had ruptured. So I was rushed into hospital, and I mean, it was really touch and go at that stage. That was a very scary experience, I have to say. And I was rushed into emergency surgery, and the following morning the consultant came in to sit on the bed with me, and she thought like I'd lost fallopian tube, ovary, everything. And she said to me, so she was kind of breaking that news to me, and she thought it was going to be traumatic, that I couldn't have any more children, and I was like, I'm grand, like, it's good. So she was relieved about that, but she did say to me, I'd always been sick after anaesthetic. Anytime I'd ever had anaesthetic in my life, I'd been very sick, and I wasn't this time. And I said that to her, and she said to me, well, with all due respect, you're significantly lighter, and the amount of anaesthetic we had to give you any other time you were being treated would have been so much that the body does react to it, but because you're lighter now, you get a lesser dose. And that actually really stuck in my head, and I was like, God, it actually did affect the medical treatment that I was given. Reacted to it. She used an analogy. It wasn't the best analogy, I suppose, from a politically correct point of view, but it did stick with me. She was the equivalent of knock out an elephant or knock out a cat. You're obviously using a lot less. And that resonated with me. And any time, which, you know, I do have me little bits where I'm like, I'm eating everything. When I need to pull myself back, that does stick in my head.
Fucking
and then I do. Oh, sure, it's been a roller coaster, all right. But I mean, you'll know, Meryl, I do kind of regularly enough outfit posts on Insta. And to me, well, during lockdown, they became important to me because I struggled at the start of lockdown. I'm a social animal. I like to be out and about and yapping, and so I was really struggling with it. And having been sick and that feeling of, God, I'm lucky to be alive kind of thing, when you start to see everybody was saying, oh, I can't wait for the days to pass by. I was like, no, I don't want the days to be passing by. I want to be living the days. Like, so I was panicking with that. So I had to pull myself out of a bit of a funk at the start of it, and getting up and getting dressed and making an effort was important to me, to feel like each day had a purpose kind of stuff. So when there was nowhere to go in the outfits, the hair and the makeup, it became, right, I'll pop a thing up on Insta. That'll be me reason to get dressed and whatever. So that became important to me, and I've just kind of continued it on. And I do, this is a bit mad as well, but I do kind of feel that sometimes being a woman in politics, you are expected to somehow like dampen down your femininity, or, you know, you're not supposed to be allowed to try and be sexy or any of that stuff. And I'm like, not having it. Like, you know, I am who I am, and I should be able to, within reason to a certain extent. I mean, I'm not going to rock up in a bleeding leather bra and hot pants, you know what I mean? But
why not?
I mean, don't push it, Meryl, because I might give it a go. But within reason, like, I don't have to be a Stepford wife to be able to walk around Leinster House. And I think that's important for other people, and the people that we spoke about earlier on, to look and go, I can wear my Air Max to Leinster House show, or I can stick my leather kecks on if I want. That's important to me as well.
Deadly. Come here, before we let you go, October 22nd, the rest of restrictions are supposed to be lifted. Can you give us any exclusive?
I can't. Honestly, that's not the kind of shit we get, to be honest. I've just been reading the news coverage this evening. Like, it looks like we're still on track for October 22nd. I think it'd take an awful lot for it not to happen, to be honest. I really do. And not only numbers, I think people's mindset are in we're out of this on the 22nd. Out of this in so much as it's possible. I mean, we're still obviously going to have to be cautious and safe. And I was reading some bullet points tonight in relation to the percentage of people in ICU that are not vaccinated. And I mean, it is quite worrying, because certainly for me and my circle and anybody I know, at the time I was like, stick it into my eyeballs. I don't care what it is. I'll risk any experimental therapy if it means I can get back out and be normal. So it's mad for me to think there's people not vaccinated. Like,
we were saying at the time, like, if the only way of getting the vaccine was getting the injection in me hole on the Late Late Show, I'd have done it. Like, you know what I mean? Just
oh, absolutely. I was the same. Just, and like, I don't care if it hasn't been properly tested or whatever. I'll risk it, because it can't be as bad as this shit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was a stat there the other day. I was listening to, I don't know if she was a member of NEFIT, but there was someone on Claire Bourne's show yesterday morning, and she was saying that 67% of 67% of cases are unvaccinated, and 55% of hospitalizations are unvaccinated. And it seems to be the demographics seems to be the majority in their 40s. So she was saying, if you're in your 40s and you're listening and you still haven't been vaccinated, please consider being vaccinated. So, like
it's all them bleeding Facebook types, isn't it? Like, did you get off Facebook and get onto Insta and like have a look at my outfits? To be grand. Stop worrying about vaccines.
That's it. Listen, Amo,
that's a great note to end on.
That's a great note to end it on. Yeah. It's been deadly. It's been quick, but it's been class. And I'll see you at the Longford Rovers match on Monday week.
Oh, actually, I don't think you will.
Oh, no.
I don't, because he can't play because he's on loan from Rovers. So he can't play against them, yeah.
You'll still have to go down and watch.
Or I might come down.
It's a bank holiday Monday.
It is, and I'm away to Sligo the following morning on ministerial duties.
Oh, well, then you probably won't go.
Oh, yeah, no. Early night is needed then. Amo, thanks so much, and enjoyed a bit of training this evening.
We have to get a screenshot, lads. I stuck lipstick on for this.
Yeah, don't worry.
He has it.
Yeah, we just grab it. Don't worry.
We grab it anytime.
Yeah. And we're sound like, we'll make sure your eyes are closed, you are looking wonky. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry. The whole lot. Like.
We'll add
a normal one.
Photoshop.
Lads, thanks a million. That was great crack.
Thanks so much,
Thanks so much, Emma. Really appreciate your time.
Deadly.
Catch you later.
Deadly. Thanks.
Enjoy. Yeah. Bye-bye.
A wonderful guest was Anne Marie McNally. Very easy to chat to. Very easy to chat to, Amo.
Very easy. And we always say that that our podcast is like going out for a few pints. I'd say she'd be great crack out for a few pints.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say she's well able to spin a yarn and tell a story and that kind of thing. I'd say she'd be great crack, all right.
Absolutely. And it's mad that being a physio for a football team as well, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, she's like, it's one of, as you said, a jack of all trades. Like, she's got many strings to her bow, but more power to her. Very, very impressive person. And I think you actually said it when we were talking to her as well. It seems as though whatever she puts her mind to, she gets out and gets it done, like, which is
absolutely
admirable in anybody.
And that attitude led to her losing 10 stone, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's no easy feat.
This is it. But yeah, really enjoy chatting to Amo, and may talk to her again one day.
Absolutely.
You'll be shouting at her across some football stand or something like that, I'm sure. But
yeah, Amo's stepson is Dean Williams, Shamrock Rovers player who's currently on loan at Longford Town. So that was the reference there. I'll see you at Longford next week. But he's not allowed to play against Shamrock Rovers as per his loan agreement.
Very good. I've enjoyed that, Graham. But alas, that is it for this week. If people want to listen to the almost 300 episodes and the thousands of hours of free content we've provided over the last few years, where can they do so, my friend?
They can go to WTSpod.com, or they can search WTS Pod on any and everywhere you can get a podcast. Places such as Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Apple Podcast, everywhere you can get a podcast. Also, Danny is on Twitter and Instagram at DanJoeMurray, and I'm at Twitter and Instagram at MerriganMania. Until next time.
Your eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose.
Too sweet.